this. And we will get started. So again, thank you for being here. My name is Heather Cook. I am one of the assistant directors here at the Center for Career and Professional Development. And we are going to take a look at your resumes. I'm happy to answer some questions here at the end. So this is just the general workshop to give you an idea of what to put in your resume, but we can certainly go more into it. If you all have questions, feel free to unmute yourself or drop them in the chat or hold them for the end. I am happy to answer. So my email is here. You're welcome to email me with any questions, or if you'd like for me to take a look at your resume at some point in the next couple of weeks, I'm happy to do so. So if you have not been to our center or been able to attend any of our workshops, we do start with the 9 core competencies that we have found that employers, professionals, people who are interviewing our students for graduate and professional schools, just about any next step that you might be looking at are looking for in our college students. So they know and they can see from your academic work what you've done and your skills there. These are transferable skills that are not necessarily as evident on your resume, but you can really kind of incorporate some of the terminology, really talk about specific examples where you have developed these competencies, and then you're going to really kind of impress them with that. So when considering your resume, all 9 competencies basically come into play. But if you want to think about your communication in the written form, your self-awareness and brand of how you put yourself on paper, that is something to keep in mind as you progress through this workshop. I will send this workshop to you all, so you'll have the hyperlinks. We do have something where you can rate your proficiency with the CCPD competencies, and it's hyperlinked here. So I will send this to you. I might be able to drop it in the chat at the end. All right, so if you think about the job search in general or as a whole, consider the goal of the resume is to get the interview. You want to get the interview so that you can get in front of them, and you want to do really well in the interview so you get the offer. So it's not as simple as that, I recognize, but you do want to take a moment to think about your resume as just the foot in the door. Getting your foot in the door is what you want to do with this. So you really want to introduce yourself, highlight your experiences, and how they're going to transfer to the role that you're applying to. It's also a place where you can kind of show the impact you've had in the field so far and what you've done to intentionally prepare yourself for your next step. So once you get into an interview, you're going to have an opportunity to expand on these experiences. But if you get them into the resume in a really concise and impactful form, you're more than likely going to be at least reviewed for that possibility. So most of you likely have a resume or have at least started to develop one. But if you're thinking about kind of revamping it or taking a look and starting over with it, whatever you're doing with your resume, start brainstorming your experiences. Think about all of the experiences that you've had and figure out which ones really speak to the position that you are applying to. We do recommend you keep a running document of all of your experiences so that when you are applying to different positions, you can tailor your document to each one. Remember that we're giving you some guidelines for format and content, but there's really no one way to write a resume. The document has to reflect who you are, and it has to really give the examples of what you've done in terminology that you're going to be able to reflect when you actually start talking to the person. So like I said, I'll send this presentation to you. You're welcome to link to the resume packet. We have a little sheet with that QR code that you're welcome to take a look at several of our resources that are online. When you are creating your resume, you're going to want to keep in mind the field, or if you have a position in particular that you want to relate to, you're going to tailor that experience to the position. These are some simple formatting guidelines. Most people start with a document like a Word document is what we recommend. Some people really do like some of the templates that are out there. We generally recommend not using a template. What you end up doing sometimes with templates is kind of fighting with the format at the end instead of adding relevant content. So typically you're going to have a 1-inch margin to start, but as you gain experiences, you're going to need a little bit more room. So you can jump down to a 1/2-inch margin. The font size is typically 11, but somewhere between 10 and 12 is fine. Your name can be a bit larger. Your name does need to kind of stand out, but it can be around 14 to 16 point font. If you go any higher than that, it's typically referred to as a kind of a ego font, so you wouldn't want to do that. Dates and locations are typically aligned on the right-hand side, and the content and skills are typically aligned on the left. Pick a font that most people have downloaded on their computer so that your resume doesn't end up showing up in a strange way. And you want to make sure that you can save it as a PDF to retain the format. Page length is typically, for a bachelor's degree, 1 page, graduate degree, 2 pages. As more as you go on, you can move to a CV if you're in academia, and that can be multiple pages. In some cases, someone may have a lot of experience and might go over to 2 pages, and that can be appropriate, but in general, you want to start with a 1 page. So here's some content ideas. So if you're stuck on adding sections that are going to be really relevant to what you want to get into, the headings, you're going to have your demographics up at the top, obviously, so they know how to get in touch with you. You're going to have your education. You're going to add any experiences that you've had, paid or unpaid. Sometimes students feel like they can only put paid experiences in their content section, but you can gain a lot of skills in different areas, including volunteer, research projects, special projects that you've done, creative inquiries, anything like that can lead to filling out your resume in a robust way. So starting with the sections of the resume, whenever you have a section, you're going to add the experiences in reverse chronological order. So that means the most recent first and any that you're currently in. And you're going to create sections to help you place those relevant sections where you want them. So in the next couple of slides, or the next few slides, we're going to look at that a little bit more in depth. But I wanted to kind of show you an example. So this one I had to split over 2 pages, but if you see how this looks, where you see the demographic information at the top, an objective statement we'll talk about in just a minute. Your education, you do typically want that to be close to the top of the page since you are students and that's what you're doing. And then within your experience, you're going to have bullet statements and dates and locations, and you're going to have several experiences hopefully to add to that. And then an example of some of the other headings that we were talking about. They're still relevant. They just don't necessarily have to be at the top of the page. So you can see here, we've got some leadership experience, volunteer experience, honors, extracurriculars, and some certifications. So let's take a look a little more in depth at each one. So ensure that your name is highlighted. It will be the most prominent text on the page, but again, don't jump to the 35, 40-inch fonts, but 14 to 16 point is appropriate. Try to stick with the same font. I know some templates that students have brought in or have used have a lot of different fonts, but that can be distracting from the content. Please make sure that your demographic information is correct. I've had a few students who will come in and they've looked at this document so many times, but they're not getting an email or they're not getting a response that they feel like they should have. And then maybe there was something, I know there was something wrong with one student with her email and one student had her phone number transposed. So just take a look, make sure that it's accurate. There's some physical address ideas. Some people like to have it on there, especially if you are trying to make a connection to the area where you are applying. So you can, it's helpful if you have a Clemson for school and maybe a permanent address closer to where you're applying. Say you're from Irmo and you want to apply at Irmo, so you can have your temporary or current address and permanent address. But it's also becoming where it's not necessary at all. You don't necessarily have to have a physical address. Most people can communicate without having that information. It's going to be in your application anyway. You do want to make sure to use your Clemson email. I know that you guys get a lot of emails, but Clemson in general, just having that name can be a networking tool in itself. If you have a LinkedIn or other kinds of portfolios or anywhere where you've added some of the things that you want to expand upon, you can add that here as well. As far as your phone number, make sure that you have a voicemail set up. And make sure that it's not just the generic, you have reached this number. Sometimes recruiters want to make sure that they are reaching someone in particular, and they might not leave a message if you don't have your voicemail set up. And you might want to listen to it and make sure that it's not you at age 13 when you set up your voicemail. You want to make sure it sounds professional at this point. Now, like I said, the objective statement is optional. If you decide to use one, you can tailor it to each position that you're applying to. It can be a great place to indicate that you have skills needed that are in the position description itself. So it's a place to put some language that's reflective of what they're looking for. Employers who like objective statements typically like to see the brief summary of skills. So you can see here where it's got to obtain this particular position at this particular place, and then picking out communication and problem solving skills and a passion for positively influencing students. So somewhere in that position, it probably states in there several times, excellent communication skills, analytical thinking, problem solving. So you can see where you can get that on the page at a higher point on the page if you'd like. Now, there are some recruiters who don't necessarily care for an objective statement, so it is optional. And if you don't have room for it, this would be something that you could drop off and embed some of the things like communication and problem solving skills. You can embed those in the bullet statements per your experience. All right, so then we get to your education. You do want to list your degree, obviously, and you want to spell it out in the way that it is it will be on your transcript. You don't want to use things like abbreviations of BS or BA, because an applicant tracking system might be used and it might not actually pick that up. It wants to see Bachelor of, or Bachelor of Arts, or Bachelor of Science in, and then spell out the degree. You put your date of graduation. You don't have to say expected. If it's in the future, they're going to figure that out. You want to make sure you have the location of where we are. Not everybody knows where Clemson is. If you have a minor, concentration, emphasis area, if there's anything else that you want to highlight in your academic career, you can put it here. And then if you have a GPA of 3.0 or higher, we do recommend leaving it on. And if for some reason your GPA is not quite there and you don't want to cut yourself out of experiences, you can leave it off. And if it comes up in the interview, you can then talk about, well, that was a time that I had to kind of adapt, and I've been working really hard to get my GPA up to the standard that I want. And therefore, the last 2 semesters I've had A's and B's, something like that. So here's kind of the example that we would use, where you have Clemson University along the left, and then Clemson, South Carolina, where it is on the right. Spelling out Bachelor of Science in Mathematics teaching, the date of graduation, a minor, and then with the GPA, try to use the scale. There are a few colleges in the United States that use a 5.0 scale, and some international schools that use a 10.0 scale. So if you've worked hard for that GPA, which I know you have, you want to make sure that it's out of the 4.00. So use the same number of decimal points for consistency. And then if you have any licensure pending, or if you've gained licensure, you can add that on there as well. All right, so now the next part where we're going to go into is really the most important part, is your experience. It's really a place for you to highlight where you have developed your skills, where you've developed your competencies. And again, it's not always paid experiences. It can be experiences that you have grown in academically, projects, volunteer work, leadership roles, and you can bullet them out just like things that you have been paid for. So when you are considering your experience, you want to study that position description for both the required qualifications and the preferred experience. So that's going to give you those keywords. So once you're looking at it, you can even highlight, identify words that you see over and over again. And if they really fit your skills, use that terminology. That is a way to kind of put them in strategically in your bullet statements to kind of showcase that you fit the position. Using action verbs, using a strong action verb of what you did, maybe not what you were responsible for, but what you actually did, and using quantifiers, using anything to kind of showcase the impact that you've had in that role. So I'll show you some examples of that. I know this is kind of small, but As you can see here, you got collaboration with a cooperating teacher, and then you have a quantifier here of 5. Incorporate, analyze, utilize. So you see we're using a variety of action verbs. That is really helpful to kind of show the breadth of your knowledge and also showcase what you've done in a way that's really strong. We have a list of action verbs. I can certainly drop the resume packet into the chat here at the end, so you will have that as well. And then thinking about other experiences that you've had that maybe you weren't paid for, but you have leadership experience. And then you can also bullet out what you've done within that, because there are many things that you're learning within programs that you've done while you're in school. It can be involvement, it can be fundraising with a fraternity or sorority. It can be just about anything that really helped round out your experience and help you to develop that competency. Volunteer experience, sometimes students forget that. I mean, those are very valuable things that are helpful to add to your resume as well. Special sections, you can add whatever you really want, that's as long as it's relevant to the position, the field, things that you really want to get into. So it can be qualifications, it could be related coursework. I've had some students early in their career in college and they don't feel like they have enough experience, but they have had some courses that are relevant and they've had done some projects within those courses as well. Extracurricular activities and honors, that can be helpful for them to see that you are able to maintain that excellent GPA with the fact that you're still in school. Certifications and endorsements. So these may not be things that are technical in nature, but if you are really strong in a technical platform and want to add this here, you can have a technical skills section, and then you can add proficiencies to that. So say that you are certified in some Excel program or in a Adobe platform, you could add that here, and that would be something to kind of help them see how you've used that before. So once you kind of get to the point where you're pretty happy with your resume, you want to make sure to seek feedback. So when you're reviewing it, you've seen it a lot. You've looked at it over and over. So you pretty much know what you think it says, but sometimes our minds play a little trick on us and it says what we think it says, but it's actually spelled wrong. So you want someone else to review it as well. You want to make sure your formatting is consistent. Sometimes recruiters have resumes that are very similar in experience, but if someone has a spelling error, or if someone is kind of inconsistent with formatting with their typeface, that kind of thing, they might move that person to the no pile and keep the one that doesn't have inconsistent formatting. So spelling, grammar, and content, that's all things that you need to keep in mind. And you want to make sure that it's relevant information. And that's not always easy if you don't research the position, but that's why we recommend researching the position and talking to people in the field of what they're looking for, making sure that it's relevant. And when you're asking someone else to review it, you certainly can use our services, but other people who know you and who will be honest with you, who won't just say, oh yeah, that's great, you should, everything's fabulous, no feedback needed. You want honest, accurate, good feedback to give some critiques. It's nice to have someone really give you feedback to improve. And you may have a great resume, but there might be something that you can improve upon that someone might be able to offer to you. So that honest feedback is kind of hard, but we are here for you. And you can always use things like the Writing Center. They have the email critiques, things that you can do in that way. So I don't spend a huge amount of time on resumes because I feel like most people get it. And sometimes students have very specific questions or really want to talk, not just in generalities, but have been thinking, oh, I need to ask someone about that. So I am happy to take questions. If anybody has any, you're welcome to drop it in the chat. Or if you want to unmute yourself, I'd be glad to try to answer.
This one is a little interesting. I know you kind of already went over it. Are you able to hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay. So you kind of went over like the certification and everything, but like, so for example, I know most of us are education majors. And if you are getting certified to teach English as a foreign language, and like you also have like your teaching certification, would those go like near each other, or are you saying like put it down where you had like the CPR stuff?
I think you could do it either way. I think if you were going into education, that might really be more relevant at the top with your education section. I've seen it both ways, but I think it really stands out that you've rounded out your experience in that way.
And then would you put your, I saw you had like teaching certification and you had pending. Would you put the date that you completed the like foreign language certification as well?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank
Those are
you.
good questions. So, well, have you already done that teaching foreign language?
I'm doing it right now.
Okay, great. I know we have a session on that next week. I'm really looking forward to that one. Any other questions? All right, well, I'm going to share a couple of things about what's coming up and a little bit about our resources. I know that this was slated for an hour, but I never have to spend an hour on resumes. But I'm here for you. I can stick it out if we need to. So I know this has been circulated around with some of the events that are happening next week. Resume Blitz is basically, we're going to have career counselors and some people from the school districts who will be online to review resumes. We've done this for the general school population, and it's been pretty well attended and pretty well received, because talking to an employer when you're not applying for a job can be really helpful to get their feedback. They're going to talk about what it is that they're looking for, and if they feel like there's something you can add to it, they're going to be able to tell you specifically. So we do have some of the district folks coming in that were provided by one of the faculty members there. We are having Jennifer Brondell come in and talk about the Teach English Abroad, or Teaching English as a Foreign Language program here at Clemson. So we're really excited to have her come in and talk about what the program is, what it looks like, and what kinds of people are doing this program. And then we know that the fair is not till the spring, but one thing about that is you can never be too prepared too early. We have our career fair person kind of talking a little bit about what to expect from the fair from our perspective. But again, we're going to have some district partners there talking about what they want to see from students when they approach the table. I think that can be very daunting to approach a recruiter or an employer if you haven't done it, or if you don't have a connection with them yet. So we do have that coming up next week. So the Resume Blitz and Prepare for the Fair are both virtual, and Teach English Abroad is in Tillman 206, I believe. So hopefully you can come to those. Don't forget that you can get some free clothing and professional attire at the Clemson Career Closet. It's located over in the Old Student Union, room 166. And if you take a look at the website, it'll give you the hours. You can even make an appointment if you want to go in there and kind of have the intern or one of the staff help you kind of weed through the clothing. You can get 2 items per semester. The inventory fluctuates and it varies. It is dependent upon donations, but we do have someone who goes through the donations. That's why we hire interns, so that we are not having just Grammy's clothes in there. We donate those back, and then we have work appropriate clothing there. We also have some conference attire, and sizing, it just depends. There's sizing is depending on who's submitting those. But we also have twice a year the JCPenney Suit Up event, where we have some gift cards for that, and you can go to JCPenney and actually they shut the store down in Anderson just for Clemson students, and they have extra professional wear and people there to help you, and deep discounts. So keep that in mind. It'll probably be coming up right before the fair this year. And of course, we're here for you. If you need an appointment, you can just email us at the cucareercenter@gmail.com. We are working on an e-scheduler, but right now that's the best way to get in touch with us. We have drop-ins every afternoon, 1:30 to 4. Those are just for brief 15 minutes, but we can get quite a bit done in that amount of time. And then the appointments Monday through Friday, 10 to 12 and 1:30 to 4. And those are for things that might require a little bit more time, or if it's just something that you really need to schedule that out and you can't wait. So we know with education majors, sometimes the schedule is hard. So always get in touch with us. Sometimes we can just do email critiques, email questioning if it's after hours based on your classes and teaching and all the things that you guys are doing. So we do, of course, want feedback. So if you don't mind doing this little survey for me here at the end, that will really be helpful in us knowing how we are presenting information to our students and making sure that we are coming across in a way that's helpful. We want to make sure that these resources are available, but if they're not helpful in some way, we need to know so that we can change that. And we know students' needs are changing all the time. All right, so I'm going to stop sharing and stop the recording.